We are almost good to go for pre-qualifying here at Brands Hatch. This is the opening round of Fanatec GT World Challenge Europe powered by AWS Sprint Cup, and pre-qualifying is, if you like, FP2 or as the name suggests, the session before the real qualifying. And were that not to take place, you would take these times to form a grid. It's going to be interesting, that is for sure, because 29 cars around the full Grand Prix circuit makes for a very crowded house indeed. Track temperature's gone up a bit. It's still a very chilly day. Has the feel of being the end of the season at a winter race meeting rather than mid-May, but track temperature is getting up. It is warmer, it is brighter, and the fans are coming out to see GT cars on the Grand Prix circuit here. Many, of course, Valentino Rossi fans. He switches this year to BMW with WRT. Everywhere you go in the paddocks, plural, whether it's where the teams are or where the hospitality is based in the outer paddock, there are lots of Rossi fans all waiting for a glimpse of the great man or an autograph. But he will be out on track very shortly. This morning in free practice, it was Mercedes AMG to the fore. Raffaele Marciello did the time, and a 1:22.5 is now the target. Gemma Scott is down in the pit lane, David Addison and John Watson trackside. We were saying this morning, John, that this is a proper good old school circuit. There's relatively little margin for error. It is a really proper driver circuit, isn't it?
And all the better for it. So let's have a little look at the track map coming up in a second. So here is the famous Grand Prix circuit at Brands Hatch. 2.43 miles, 3.916 kilometers. 9 major turns and a couple of little sort of swerves, but all about staying on the black stuff, because if you stray off, even though there's curbing on the outside, the grass from the rain that we had here over Friday, it's still very, very wet. And we've seen a couple of drivers in the morning session getting a little bit off track into the gravel at Paddock, off at Stirling's. It's a circuit that doesn't take any prisoners, and it's all the better for it.
Relatively, there aren't that many stop-start areas to the lap, although you do go down to first gear for that Druids hairpin. What Brands Hatch does have, of course, is an awful lot of climbs. There's that steep climb up to Druids, and of course the corresponding descent, because you come out of the hairpin and you run parallel downhill. There's another climb out of Surtees, which is much tighter than you think, that corner, and then there's another climb up towards Hawthorne, and even, of course, the pit straight isn't completely flat. It is cambered and throws you towards the pit wall. So it's less of an issue for a rolling start, but a standing start from that grid is always a bit of a talking point.
Well, the standing start, I mean, I know the standing start, it's on quite a big sort of downward slope. But I'll tell you, do you know what the biggest slope is here at Brands Hatch?
Tell me.
It's the climb up into the commentary booth. I'm absolutely panting.
I thought you were breathless with excitement.
Well, maybe that as well. But anyway, what a wonderful racetrack. There's a lot of airs, bitter, winter or whatever. Hopefully, I'm looking skyward. There is a break in the sky. Maybe we're going to get a bit of blue sky. Some of the faithful around the racetrack, cameras on their shoulders, proper photographers. Well, what's that on their hats? Well, maybe they do a bit of weekend work elsewhere.
But a true Valentino Rossi fan. He's got his Rossi top. There's the man himself heading down the pit lane aboard 46 BMW, the car that he shares with Maxime Martin. Cars on the Grand Prix circuit at Brands Hatch, doesn't matter what they are, always well worth seeing, and a GT3 car is absolutely no exception. The fast lane is open. Any second, the lights will go green at the end of the pit lane. This is a 1-hour session. It doesn't determine the grid, but it could do if, for any reason, qualifying did not take place. Qualifying comes up at the end of today, and it's going to be dry by the look of it, but it's going to be a pretty chilly circuit. Drivers then watch on as co-drivers take out the cars. Yeah,
Thomas Neubar having a little look across the pit wall to see what may be going on. Earlier in the day we had, I mean, I was very impressed. The quickest lap was a 1:22.5 set by the 88 Acudas. Mercedes-Benz Raffaele Marciello behind the wheel. No big surprise there, but 1:22.5 was actually 0.8 of a second quicker than second place. That was Christopher Mies in the Sanderlock Junior Audi team. So anything in at 22 is going to be at the races, as they say. Whether anybody will try and maybe have a simulation for qualifying later in the afternoon, well, wait to see. Obviously, you don't want to waste tyres unnecessarily. So there we are. Mad Panda going out on a set of tyres that actually were the tyres that car ended up in the gravel trap at Paddock Hill Bend with. You can see the tyres even. There's still an indication of the gravel smearing on the sidewall of the right rear tyre.
Tyre degradation here is higher than other circuits, so some of the teams tell me. You get 6 sets of tyres and an optional set that you could carry over, but what the teams are always trying to do is keep a fresh set for the pit stops, so that in the second stint of a race you have a fresh set. So the theory is that actually wherever you qualify, you would start the race, whether it's race 1 or race 2, on a used set, because if you're stuck in traffic, why waste a good set? And if you're at the front with clear real estate, actually you could still get those used tyres to work, but then you put on one of your new sets for the second stint rather than doing it at the start of the race.
It's all part of the strategy, and there are a myriad of people working in the garages, as behind the garages, looking at all the options that are going to be the best options for your particular set of circumstances. And we see 46, that is the Rossi Maxime Martin BMW M4 GT3, and what a magnificent piece. So I've been singing its praises over this broadcast, and Maxime Martin running very wide coming out of Graham Hill Bend, and Graham Hill Bend is probably the most notorious corner at Brands Hatch for getting done for exceeding track limits, and there's been a number of track limit abuses over the session we had this morning. So drivers are aware, as they were made aware by race director Alain Nadar last night, that any abuse of track limits will be picked up and, if necessarily, penalised.
Yes, there was a touring car race here a week ago, final race of the day, that was all decided on track limit penalties, so hopefully it won't be a trend that echoes on here. Of course, Brands Hatch, one of the places where there are these pressure pads that take a photograph of the car offline, and now thanks to the Swiss timing technology, they're not just timing the races, they have the facility with GPS to find out if a car is outside the white line of the track. So Maxime Martin is going to potentially offer up the benchmark time. The very rapid German driver Alex Arca has gone through and done a 25.56. That's bettered, in fact, by Simon Gachet. Jordan Love goes through, Dries Van Voor goes through. Maxime Martin does go fastest, 1:25.491, but it's a 22.5 or better that is the target really from this morning.
Yep, and other factor that's changed since we ran this morning, track has been in use constantly, so there's been Pirelli rubber going down, there's other manufacturers' rubber going down. Rained here heavily on Friday afternoon, evening, so the track got pretty washed. So the track needs now to be, in a sense, redressed with race rubber. So the more rubber goes down in general, the better the track will become. And because ambient temperatures aren't particularly high, it might take 2 or 3 laps to get the optimum performance out of the Pirelli tyre. You've got to get it into its operating window to ensure that the pace will be there. So all these things are part of what a driver has to do, and being advised by the team when the track might be clear. If you've got a shot at a clear lap, well, give it one. If you've got traffic ahead of you, spare the tyres and wait until you get a clearer shot.
Right, track limits are going to be a thing. Simon Gachet, who had gone fastest, has had his lap cancelled for track limit violations. Also, the same has just been done for Adam Mateki's Boots and VDS Audi, and it's at Paddock and it's at Graham Hill Bend.
Yeah, I mean, the majority of them are at turn 3, which is Graham Hill Bend. We've had car 10, that was Boots and VDS Taki, that was at Paddock Hill Bend. So it's actually running wide at the bottom of Paddock Hill Bend is not something you really want to think about doing too frequently, because you will get into trouble if you do so. But turn 3, which is the exit of Graham Hill Bend, is very, very easy. In fact, just watching from the commentary booth, as cars come through the exit, every one of them is running over what I would call the runoff area. Some are getting all 4 wheels entirely off the racetrack, some are getting 2 and a bit or 3 and a bit, but as long as you've got a bit on the track, you'll be given a wave.
Right, Raffaele Marciello is the fastest. It's a 23.9, so not as quick as he went this morning, although it is a little bit warmer. If that's going to play a major part, we will find out. You're riding on board with Marciello, who's backed out of that quite early for Sheen Curve.
Yes, I think that he's either decided that that lap wasn't worth the effort and he's bailed on it, or he's just building the car, building the temperature to a point where, again, the information will come. Now, here's your chance. So a 23.9 would be, well, the best part, 1.4 seconds off what he did earlier in the morning when track conditions and temperatures were totally different. Still not much warmer ambient-wise. Track might be fractionally up, but there's a wonderful view from behind the wheel. And look at, I mean, he's such a laconic person out of the car, and he makes driving that Mercedes AMG GT3 look So easy.
Ricardo Feller there, absolute best in the first sector. Personal best in the second, so the number 40 Audi that runs out of the Trezor Orange 1 stable. He shares it with Matthew Druni. Ricardo Feller heading up towards the timing line. This looks good. Is it going to be good enough to get onto terms with Raffaele Marciello? The Attempto run car goes through, and that lap for Ricardo Feller is the fastest on a 1:23.954.
Marcello has gone fastest in Sector 1 on this current lap. But what is interesting is, do you think these cars they've had their day in the sun or the day in the whatever? Well, there are 7 Audis in the top 10 right now. These cars are here to win this weekend.
Ricardo Feller then, the 2021 ADAC GT Masters champion, if you like, the German GT Championship. There is Raffaele Marciello, then as John said, absolute best in Sector 1 on this lap, but he's down in Sector 2. He has done a 37.2 within that sector. That's 3/10 down on Giacomo Altue's best in the middle sector. So here he comes up towards the timing line. He's going to have to dig deep then. His best is a 23.990. He's got to find 37 thousandths to go top. And we wait for the time to be confirmed. He's gone across the line fastest, 1:23.932. He's quickest by 22 thousandths.
Actually interesting, Giacomo Altue, third quickest, is in one of the new Ferrari 296s. So we're expecting those cars to really move forward as the season progresses, because that is going to be a real horse of a race car. Oh, sorry, did I say horse? I should have said a real prancing horse of a race car.
Absolutely. Right, that is an Audi that isn't going anywhere in a big hurry. 99 then sits in the pit lane, wheel-less. That's the Alex Arca Lorenzo Patrese car that Alex Arca had gone out in and has pitted, as you can see, and now Albert Costa's Ferrari has done the absolute best in the first sector. This is the Red Bull coloured car, 69. So it comes from the Emil Frey Racing stable, but Albert Costa quicker than anybody in Sector 1.
Noted Albert Costa when he did his run this morning, going through Westfield out of the back of the Grand Prix loop. The circuit there maybe is a more uneven than other bits of the racetrack, but a lot of vertical movement on the Ferrari. Now, whether they managed to deal with that, adjust the car to give him an improvement, certainly in that section of the circuit, and therefore maybe find a way of going that little bit quicker. We wait to see what the result is of this. He's got a personal best in middle sector.
Yeah, so absolute best, personal best. Christopher Meese, who's yet to do a lap time, is doing it the other way around with a personal and an absolute. Christopher Meese goes fastest then. Lap times are taking a while to be confirmed in the system, but he's done a 1:23.116 now, Christopher Meese. Albert Costa's last lap put him second. That's number 14 Ferrari then, which is heading to the pit lane. So that car comes in. Giacomo Altue at the wheel of it. So Meese, Costa, 0.158 of a second, the top two the margin. Marciello third, Feller fourth, Gilles Magnus fifth, and Altue sixth.
Gilles Magnus, very impressive at Monza for the first round of the Endurance Championship. How many minutes are we into this session? Roughly 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Within 10 minutes this morning, Raffaele Marciello had gone quickest by a considerable margin and had done a 1:22.5, which was never subsequently beaten in that 30-minute session that the pro drivers had. As we look at Albert Costa, watch through Westfield, and I think that car looks marginally better now than it did earlier in the session, but it's still got a lot of vertical movement, and it's almost like a ratcheting effect at the rear of the car as it rides the bumps. On the smoother parts of the racetrack, it looks fine, but on those little bit bumpier parts, there's still that little bit of element of maybe fine-tuning to help the car just get that last tenth or so of a second out of its ultimate performance.
So over the timing line now then goes Albert Costa. A 1:23.273, the best lap that car has offered up. Driver changes then in the pit road as Raffaele Marciello will give way to Timo Boguslavski. Patrick Niederhauser is the one that's not yet done a time, and this is a start-up lap, but the next one for Niederhauser, I think he's just about to come across the line. He's under investigation for his pit lane speed, as is Altue, but yet to do a lap time is Niederhauser, who starts a flying lap now.
So we've still got, in the top 10, we've still got 7 Audis in the top 10, but what we've also now got are 2 of the new 296 Ferraris, which is the first time we've seen both of those cars inside the top 10. But here is the ultimate problem at Brands Hatch. you get a group of cars all very similarly matched, and how do you find a way to get a clear lap? Well, the way you find a clear lap is actually you back out of it and let those other cars go on their way, and hope that you don't back out too much, that the cars that are catching you then sort of absorb you in their own little sort of group of cars.
So number 21, the Compio Audi touring car team, really by success. Also Volkswagen Fun Cup team. Gilles Magnus at the wheel of it. Patrick Niederhauser is hustling on. This is the car that's yet to do a time, but he's done, obviously, a personal best in the first sector because this is his first proper push lap. Into Stirling's he comes. So Niederhauser, we know he's good, and he's got better and better and better over the seasons. Now comes down towards Clark Curve. Traffic is ahead, but he's not going to catch on this lap. So he needs to be in the 23s, and it is looking good then as he comes up towards the timing line. A 36.8 in the middle sector is good, and you piece it all together. Patrick Niederhauser goes across the line, and that puts him second fastest, 1:23.174. It's another Audi up there.
You didn't think you'd Einstein in the Commodore booth with you, but I worked out the theory of relativity on that lap. Patrick Niederhauser was on it all the way. Watch the timing and scoring, and you can see in that middle sector he was a very strong 36.8 seconds, where everybody else more or less either in the 37s or the low 38s.
Now, while all that's been going on, Niederhauser has gone quicker again in the first sector with an absolute best. This is Albert Costa, who did a personal best. It was the absolute, but it's now only a personal best in the first sector. So this is going to be good. It's a stunning looking car, this Ferrari, and that livery works on it, doesn't it, as well, as it comes under the vehicle bridge then now down through clearways into Clark Curve. The road starts to drop your way towards the pit wall. Up to the line comes Costa. So his last one was a 23.7. He needs a 23.1 to be back at the races. He's broken the beam, he's gone across the line, and it's a 23.206. So it's a personal best, but he was slower in the last sector. Now, this is Niederhauser, absolute best, but he's dropped some time.
Yeah, he's dropped. Well, he did a 36.8 in that second sector. The previous lap now, 0.3 of a second down on this lap, but he was fastest overall in sector one, so it might even itself out. It might even be able to beat Christopher Mies, who's just gone 58 hundredths of a second quicker than him in this lap, 1:23.416. So that again, he retained that 0.3 of a second loss in that middle sector. So he got through the Ferrari relatively cleanly, and the Lamborghini, and will be able to drive for another one because he doesn't seem to have too much traffic directly in his eye line.
Wide over the curb there, Niederhauser. The session, 46 minutes to go, so we've only done really 14, 15 minutes or so. There's quite a lot of time left within this. And now, interestingly, we're not having quite so many cars on track, and we're not having quite so many improvements in sectors. So the pit lane pretty busy right now. Split of Ferraris. You've got the 488 there, which just goes through, as well as the 296. This is Nicola Marinangeli, who had a spin coming out of Sheen Curve earlier on in the day. Number 71, the AF Corsa car, for the man that's been a front runner in Formula 4 and Asian Formula 3, Nicola Marinangeli.
He did get a high score for style.
He did.
That spin was a very, very impressive spin. He kept it off all the things that would damage the car. Came to a standstill on the grass, just literally at this point. The tyre marks have now been rubbed off the racetrack, but it was a heart-stopping moment momentarily for the Ferrari 488. And here we can see continuing on its way, looking to see what its potential. Currently it's in 16th position. A 1:24.947, so waiting to see for timing and scoring to see if there's any change.
No, slightly slower.
Slightly slower, yeah, 1:25.
The previous lap was the improved one, you're right, and then that last lap was fractionally down, so Marinangeli doesn't improve. 99 with a hop and a bounce. This is still Alex Arca.
Yeah, but he got it. He almost turned into Westfield too soon, and he had to turn away from it, and then the car was in the wrong part of the exit of the corner, so a very odd-looking entry. Whether he felt the back of the car was about to snap, and certainly not leaving a lot on the table, just running on the very, very edge on the exit of Stirling's, kicking up the dust and keeping the car running in a straight line, which was the right thing to do. If you tried to pull it back too quickly, that would have also spelled possibly a problem.
Coming up behind the McLaren, so Arca goes through. 27, by the way, the quickest car in the session has now been given over to the returning Gregoire de Moustier. We have had an improvement from Maxime Martin, who is currently the best of the BMW drivers, 5th fastest, and is going quicker again on his next lap. So Those that had made an early pit stop are now going back out. This is Alex Archer in replay. So coming into Sterling's, he's okay at this bit. Again, it's a slightly banked corner. It drops down on the left-hand side, turns through. John said he left nothing on the table. Well, there is the evidence. He's up the curb, wheels over the curb, onto the dirt, but he's still got two in contact with the racetrack.
Yeah, the key to not getting into trouble was keeping the car as straight as possible once he'd effectively exited the corner. So while he was on the grass, he wasn't putting any unnecessary load into it that could have caused the car to deviate pretty much sharp left.
Now, who else do we need to be keeping an eye to? Well, what about this car, number 119, which has yet to do a proper lap time. Marcus Paverud is at the wheel of it. We've seen him in GT4. He's a double Citroën DS3 Norwegian champion. Pretty experienced GT3 campaigner of late, with both Fanatec GT and the International GT Open races under his belt, but that car is 25th fastest. So down out of the Silver Cup, the car out of Clark Curve it comes up towards the timing line. So Marcus Paverud, the lap does not suggest an improvement, and one is not offered up. Jordan Love, though, has gone up to 11th. We didn't see much, if anything, of Jordan in the free practice session, but he's taken over 77 Mercedes for this afternoon.
Yeah, Frank Bird set a very strong time very early this morning, but now it's Jordan Love behind the wheel. Again, just looking at the amounts of track warnings, it's sort of almost now equally split between the exit of Paddock Hill Bend and the exit of Graham Hill Bend, both getting a fair amount of abuse, almost enough for you to be, get the old cuffs out.
Well, Gilles Magnus is doing a very good job indeed. Personal best, absolute best. Audi, a brand with 6 Brands Hatch wins to its credit. Could it be on for one more, 2 more, maybe even this weekend? So Gilles Magnus to the timing line. Let's see where this is going to put him. It looks good. Is it good enough? Well, the answer is yes, because that is fastest. Then as he comes across the timing line, it is a 1:22.991. Not as good as we were doing this morning in cooler conditions, but it's the best of the session. Really good effort.
Yes, and that's within 0.4 of a second of what, at the time that Raffaele Marcello established this morning. And there is the 77 Jordan Love, personal bests in first and second. Middle sectors almost up 1/4 of a second. So that should see from 13th up to 6th place.
Yeah, Jordan Love is another rather underrated driver. He's part of Mark Blundell's stable of drivers, but the Porsche champion in Australia, Formula 3 champion in Australia, very, very good driver indeed. Flies under the radar a bit, but I think this year he's going to make more people sit up and take notice.
Mark Blundell. Yeah, Mark, I'm sure he'll be here this weekend to keep an eye on his stable of drivers. So he doesn't live a million miles away from here. I think just across the river.
Right, so Jordan Love out of Surtees. Lucas Legere has now gone second, incidentally. So you've got Audi's 1, 2, 3, 4. Lucas Legere up to second in the times, having been a winner at Hockenheim in the endurance round of Fanatec GT last year. But they're stuck in traffic is Lucas Legere, so he can't find a way past the similar car.
No, and I mean, identical performances from both cars. The only difference is the person behind the wheel. So that he got through, but of course has compromised his entry into clearways and consequently out of Clark Curve. So while he could go on and have another clear-ish lap, the initial compromise was set in just before he concluded the last one.
The car that is the slowest at the moment is 18. That is Fernando Croce, the Brazilian driver in the GSM Lamborghini. Right, Legere, end of sector 1. Let's see, because he was good here a lap ago, even though the lap time didn't translate. Breaks the beam, and he's lost time within the first sector of this lap.
So if we were to take this as the grid for the first of the 2 sprint races on Sunday, it would be front 2 row, an Audi lockout. The next best is Thierry van der Meulen in the Ferrari, and then Jordan Love in the first of the Mercedes AMG GT3. Fred Raviche, haven't seen him this morning, or if we did, it was fleetingly. In the 12, they come to you Racing Audi, and then Timur Boguslawski. The time was established by Raffaele Marcello, so he bailed out of the car to give Boguslawski a little bit more seat time. He had time this morning, but I think he needs just drive himself in to being back at Brands Hatch with all the, the limitations that you have on a very much old school racetrack that brings out the best of the best.
Well, we were saying this morning, Raffaele Marciello is almost an honorary Brit now that he's racing in British GT along with Jules Gounon. That was the car that Giacomo Altway started the session in, number 14, and it is the car shared with Konsta Lapalainen, who is now behind the wheel of it. So Lapalainen heads into Clark Curve. Remember, the lap time that you're seeing is from the car, not from the driver necessarily, as in this will be a personal best for the car rather than the personal best for that particular driver. Over the timing line goes Lapalainen, and good in sector 1, down in the other 2 stays 15 fastest. We understand, even though 32 Dries Van Thor and Charles Weert's car has been out, they've got a touch of understeer, so they're trying to dial that out of the BMW.
Yes, I think to some degree the characteristic of the BMW, and I suspect it's more related to front tire temperatures than it is to, let's say, a mechanical issue on the BMW. So you've got to get energy, you've got to get tire temperature, core tire temperature, not surface tire temperature. When you get those things resolved, then that's when the grip will come, that's when the balance of the car then comes alive, and that's when the driver can do his job. Wow, look at Ricardo Feller coming out of Stirling's. I mean, there ain't nothing on the plate after that. Personal best by a significant margin, first and second sectors. Currently running in 13th position, Ricardo Feller. You're going to get into the top 6, and this time you might even get higher than top 6. Well, doesn't he gets top 8? Well, can't be right every time.
Well, no, I mean, it was all right up until that last sector, and the last 20 seconds of the lap was slightly off the pace, ever so slightly by 10. This is having another look at Ricardo Feller's last lap. This is up at Stirling's.
Gives himself a reasonable margin on the entry, so watch as he ran the curb, and maybe running the curb was enough to just to cause that instability, and there is where ultimately what might have been a better lap, would have been a better lap, was lost. So he had to deal with that rather too wide an exit, as we see the 46 going back in to the garage to have a little bit of work done on it, and the doctor sitting behind the wheel. Now, what do you think he's thinking? What's going through his mind?
He's reliving that last lap. That's Finlay Hutchison getting ready.
Or thinking, where can I improve?
Yeah.
Well, I think the answer is everywhere, because it's not just one corner. There are 9 significant corners on this circuit, and it's almost now at a point where each corner follows into the other. You've got a short straight down Hawthorns into Hawthorne Bend. You've got a curving straight between the bottom from Graham Hill Bend to Surtees, and then you've got this long curve out of Jim Clark before you get into Paddock.
Yeah, Finlay Hutchison you've just been looking at. He's going to take over from Gilles Magnus. BMW versus Audi there. That is the Gilles Magnus car that is the fastest so far, and Ricardo Feller is now second on a 1:23.055. Legere, de Moustier, Bastard, Vermeulen. So we take that top 6, you'll see that we are having 1 or 2 driver changes, and we're still having laps cancelled because of track limit abuses.
So there's Gilles Magnus in the 21. Audi, Ricardo Feller clearly got that final sector of the lap correct, and now running up against the back of the BMW at a part of the racetrack that he can't do an awful lot about unless the BMW decides to pull over, which it's not doing because it wants to go out and run its times, and a late cut. So the Audi did the right thing. There was no way he's going to find a way around the BMW conveniently. So come in, have a little think, and see what we can do to make further improvements.
Another car we've not really looked at yet, but it's worth a look. It's 111 McLaren, the JP Motorsport car. Christian Kleen, former Grand Prix racer, of course, and Dean McDonald, who was an absolute star, wasn't he, in the Silver Cup last year? And as you look at Finlay Hutchison getting on board the Audi in the background, I think you'll just spot the gold McLaren creeping in behind the Audi. So Dean McDonald has brought that car in. What did they call him last year? Baby Dean. But he was a proper little star, sharing in Garage 59's McLarens last year.
Yeah, and he was, again, going back to our first event, the endurance event at Monza, was very impressive, as he's pretty much been every time I've seen him behind the wheel of a McLaren, and he's got all the you see people walking around. Some of them walk around dressed as racing drivers, and some of them walk around, they are racing drivers. He falls into that latter category.
There is the 111 McLaren of which we were talking. Engineer Andy Richardson overseeing everything in the pit lane as the VS Racing, Vincenzo Sospiri Racing Lamborghinis are one for the garage, one for the track. One is in, one is out. Right, how are we doing? 33 minutes of the session to go, and Riccardo Feller here is staying on track, number 40 Audi. He shares this car with Matthew Drudi, so you've got to say it's certainly a competitive one. You've got two very, very quick young drivers in this. It's a pro-class car, potential winner.
I mean, it's being absolutely nailed all the way around. I mean, there's nothing at all, especially coming through Sterling's, where he's just running the curb and running onto the dirt. Then he catches the grass. He doesn't appear to lift, and he's got so much confidence that he can do pretty much with what he wants with this number 40 Audi, currently second quickest.
Now, we haven't really touched yet on Honda, but it's great to have the NSX back on the grid. This is the newer iteration of the NSX GT3 and Nova Race with one car for Leonardo Moncini and Jacopo Guidetti. Good to have the team coming into the Sprint Cup this year. New teams as well as new brands on the grid. Sprint debut for the Nova Race team.
Well, there's no question that the core ingredients in the Honda NSX are absolutely what you want. It's just a matter of now mixing all the ingredients to get them to all work in harmony as charges up the hill. So where the first Honda is currently the Mancini car in 12th position, and then that had improvements in first and second sectors on that lap we've just watched. So they're getting there. The second Honda is further down the field, 27th. So a bit of a gap between the sister cars. And there's still an Audi lockout. Top 5 are now Audis, and the next best car is Vermeulen in the Ferrari in 6th position.
Interesting to see how many drivers we've got that are new to Brands Hatch, and there is Thierry Vermeulen, who is one of them. If you're wondering, if you weren't with us for free practice this morning, if you're wondering where the Red Bull link to this car comes, well, it is in Vermeulen, whose father manages Max Verstappen, and Jos Verstappen has had quite a big part to play in the early career of Thierry Vermeulen, who's had this moment, as you can see, coming out of Sheen Curve. Bucket and spade job across the beach, that?
Yep, and luckily the front splitter isn't scooping up too much, and he gets almost to the, well, he went a long way through that gravel. It's not really a trap, it's there to stop a car. But anyway, he's come through it relatively unscathed as the number 12 Audi gets pushed back into its garage. That's Fred Vervisch completing a run in 8th position.
Loyal Audi servant, isn't he, Fred?
Sorry?
Loyal Audi servant.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, people like Fred Vervisch are the bread and butter of a company that's involved in a race program. And these professional drivers, they are part of the company, but they get placed where the company wants them to go. It's not as if they can pick and choose individually, or even who their co-drivers might be.
Well, he shares with Nicholas Bart, who is the son of the team owner, as Porsche takes up attention next. The dynamic GT Huber racing car of Christian Engelhardt and Adrian Delina out on track. We know that Engelhardt is very, very quick. Real Porsche specialist too.
Who's gone quickest? Ralf van Eycken.
Ralf van Eycken, yes, for VS Racing, for Lamborghini, and a silver graded driver.
But again, we've got a false time. We've got a 1:12.551. Timing and scoring is maybe having I don't know what to say. We've had 2 false times. Now the time has been deleted. It's still Gilles Magnus who is still, his car, the 21 Audi, is still the quickest overall. Oh.
That's why it was a quick time, because it was a shortcut. It was a slow lap for the Indy circuit, but an unfeasibly quick lap for the Grand Prix circuit.
You know, in the good old days when we didn't have live cameras and television and whatever, you might have gotten away with that.
Yes. In 1978, here at the British Grand Prix, there was a celebrity race on Grand Prix morning for Formula One team managers, and it was it Jack Brabham or Frank Williams that did just that, did the Indy circuit on the last lap? And,
I suspect it was the latter.
Yes. Anyway, I was about to tell you that Valentino Rossi is under investigation for pit lane speed, number 46 BMW. Now, if it was him leaving, it's his problem. If it was Maxime Martin on the way in, but either way, the car is under investigation, but it's the doctor at the wheel of it at the moment.
So that the first of the Porsche, still the Lima behind the wheel, or no, what's going on at the back of the circuit? Boguslawski, is it still Boguslawski, or has...
It is, and he's got the car up to second, actually. Timo Boguslawski, fair play, has done a 1:23.004.
Where did that come from? That time has come from, because the car was hovering around, well, it dropped into 11th position, and all of a sudden, Bosch, it goes second quickest, so...
Well, that's encouraging, because he's not that far adrift of a Marchiello time, and that was always the problem last year, wasn't it? It was narrowing that gap between their lap times.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking 7th, 8th, 9th, and I didn't think to look higher than that, but a good effort indeed from Timo Boguslawski, gets the car, and it's the first time the 5 Audis that have been dominating the top 3 rows of the grid have had an interloper break into that group of 5.
Another one that's just improved is up to 17th, number 10, Boots and VDS Audi, Cesar Gazo at the wheel of it, another graduate of the GT4 scene. And 119, Baptiste Moulin, Marcus Pavarud's car. Marcus Pavarud has pitted, but he has done so just after a cancelled lap time. Boguslawski getting a bit frustrated with the traffic ahead of him here.
Okay, so traffic has pulled over. I don't think his hand had anything to do with it. So here we go through Hawthorns. So again, very, very small inputs going through the quicker corners now into Westfield, and a very, again, smooth, progressive releases the wheel very gently up into Sheen curve. Just as a combination of, you balance the car on the steering and the throttles, and of course he's a left foot braker, so the pedal, the throttle pedal is not being released in the old-fashioned way where your foot would come off completely, go onto the brake pedal. So into this final clearways, love this corner, let the car float out to the very edge of the racetrack, then allow its own natural path to take Clark curve and then cross start finish line. And that was 1:25.2. I don't know why that lap was, maybe the traffic got in the way, but still overall second quickest on a 23.004.
Remember I was talking about Valentino Rossi and or Maxime Martin being guilty of speeding. It was Valentino Rossi. It was on exit of the pit lane. It was 0.1 of a kilometre per hour over. The limit is 50. He was clocked at 50.1. And again, this is something that the race director will say, don't aim for 50 because you'll tip it the wrong way. Aim for 49.9, and then if you do tip it, you're at 50. But again, they push the envelope, don't they?
And I think with the greatest respect to Alain Adin, he is a very, very accomplished and a great race director. He's not a race engineer, because race engineers say, I'm not going to give up that 0.1 of a kilometre per hour. I want everything on the table.
And it's a €50 fine potentially heading that way, but you know, to Valentino Rossi, what's €50? Right, so it is Audi, Mercedes, Audi, 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 Ferrari, Mercedes, Audi, Ferrari, Honda 11th, Porsche 12th. I've not mentioned BMW, 14th, 15th, 16th, 18th. What's going on for BMW, for WRT? Because this is not what we expected.
I think you'll find everybody in the pit lane who's driving one of the Munich brand products is that they can't get the front of the car to function the way that they would like it to do. That's my assumption. So again, it'll be tire temperature, I think, related. And how do you make the front tire warm up? How do you get the temperature through the core of the tire? Well, there are lots of things you can do, but there's things that if you go to extreme, for example, one of the things used to be putting loads of camber in, but when you do that, then you heat up the inside shoulder of the tire disproportionately towards the outside of the tire, and then you get other secondary knock-on effects. So the team are going to have to find a solution, or they're going to have to get down on their hands and knees and look skyward and say, let the clouds open up and the sun bless this circuit.
Fascinating entry this for Vincenzo Sospiri's team, which has become a far more important part of the Lamborghini family, rather than just being a privateer team. Here you've got two factory drivers, one of whom is Franck Pereira, who we've not seen enough of, I would suggest, in recent seasons, but the other is Jordan Pepper, new to Lamborghini. We've seen him, of course, as a Bentley factory driver, but now he's a fully fledged Lamborghini factory peddler. And Jordan Pepper, Franck Pereira in one of these cars. Looking forward to this.
I think if you have your top 6 wish list, that Lamborghini would be amongst those. I mean, we know it's a capable car, and we know that both drivers are above any criticism.
Jordan Pepper, Bathurst 12 Hours winner. And there is the fastest car in the session. Giacomo Altway has, out of nowhere, done a 22.640.
That is a very accomplished time indeed. And now we're beginning to see something we had anticipated from Ferrari, and that is pace. So Giacomo Altway has gone, what, almost 3.5 tenths quicker than the 21 Audi. Finlay Hutchinson behind the wheel, but that time was previously set by Gilles Magnus. And all of a sudden, Ferrari have got a scent of a potential very strong qualifying car.
I mean, Altway, when he came into Lamborghini Super Trofeo, was instantly very, very impressive. Won the European Championship, won the World Finals, went off to do Italian GT and the International GT Open. We've not seen perhaps that much of him in Fanatec GT, but he comes here as a double Italian GT champion. He is a very, very quick driver, and given the tools for the job, one to watch. But it's interesting that, you know, he, like Emile Frey, has gone the Ferrari route, having owed so much of his early career to Lamborghini.
Very much so. So Ferrari 22.6, and that is, well, a tenth off the time we saw from Raffaele Marcello this morning. And as I say, am I feeling some rays?
I think you are. Coming
through the commentary window?
It's definitely getting hotter.
It certainly is. Something's going on, or else I'm having a hot flush, and I think it's the rays coming through the window.
I'm hoping it's that. Track temperature when we started the day was 10. At the start of this session, it was 16.6. It's now 19 degrees. So, yeah, everything is getting hotter. We've just had a track limit warning to Frank Bird, who you are looking at, and it was for Graham Hill Bend. The most recent cancellation of a lap time was for car number 60, and that is the Pepper Pereira Lamborghini, Franck Pereira at the wheel of it. Right, this is Frank Bird.
He's currently 9th quickest, so there's nothing on the screen that says he's done personal bests. So will he remain? Well, he certainly is not going to drop 9th, but we wait to see what that time is. 24.147, so it's fractionally down. But I mean, look, that last sector coming into Stirling, he was on it. I mean, he wasn't just out there going through the motions. He's backed out of it now. He's caught up to the tail of traffic and one of the Lamborghinis, so he doesn't want to he'll find a way around it if he needs to, and he's closed up to it very much, coming through Surtees, so he might want to make a little bit of a spurt to get ahead, so that he can go and maybe have another pop.
That Mercedes, by the way, the fastest in the Silver Cup. Jordan Love doing the time earlier on. So he's got through the traffic. So the fastest car is a Pro, the second fastest is a Gold, and the best of the Silvers currently in 9th.
So Frank Bird will... You can see, when you're not pushing, you don't make the car look like it's ragged or on the edge. So now he's going to start to push from this point, because he's got a relatively clear track ahead of him, and he can use all the squirt that the Mercedes has got down and across start-finish line, and then begin this descent. Really, that's what it is. It's a descent from Paddock Hill Bend down into that dip, and then the steep climb uphill into Druids.
Formula 2 front-runner Caelan Williams in another of the WRT BMWs down into Clark Curve. This is the car shared with Nicholas Cruton, and he heads now towards the timing line. So Caelan Williams is not, I don't think, going to be an improver on this lap. Stays 15th fastest. This is the second placed car in the session in the Gold Cup, because the Gilles Magnus and Finlay Hutchison car is way, way, way up the road.
And interestingly, all 3 BMWs here this weekend are running 15th, 16th, 14th, 15th and 16th. So there's little, about 2/10 over the 3 cars. So all 3 are consistent. So whatever the issue is, it's a consistent issue across all 3 entrants.
So BMWs together, Caelan Williams and Charles Weert 16th. Let me just repeat that. Charles Weert 16th. Triple champion in Sprint Cup, Charles Weert 16th.
So what are the sector times for Weert? So nothing in sector 1, no green, no purple, nothing like a purple. I mean, it's still a fair time, at 26.9 is not a bad time, but when you compare it to Giacomo Altwe in the Ferrari, half a second slower in sector 1.
And half a second around here, and the grid position accordingly is going to be quite significant. Right, down underneath the vehicle bridge then now comes the BMW. Replay here, that's one of the Comp2 Audis getting it all wrong into paddock, and off, and off.
And can he maintain that momentum to get back on the track and not interfere with another car? Stay off track until... Which couldn't work out which Comp2 Audi that was.
Finlay Hutchison, 21.
Ah.
So the second placed car.
Gotcha.
Right, downhill then comes the BMW. This is Charles Weert, so on Cooper Straight, 4th gear. See the speed building.
I want to stay on board as long as possible to see how much hand movement Charles Weert is having to engage in to gain or get the best from his BMW down Pilgrim's Drop, then up the hill and into Hawthorns. I mean, remember back a few laps ago we were on board with Timo Boguslawski and how smooth everything was. There seems to be a lot more turning of the wheel to make the car rotate and turn into a corner than we were seeing.
Not a happy ride, that, is it?
It's a frustrating ride because essentially it's the understeer that is the problem, and everything stems consequently as a result from that.
But you can see all the vibration that the car had as well. So it's a BMW issue, we understand. Balance and very sensitive to any adjustments that are made, and also very sensitive to anything on the road. Right, that is the Altwe Ferrari into its pit box. We've got 16 minutes to go. Time has flown.
Well, I got into the booth just on time, and yeah, so time has gone. And whereas any wood in the booth at all, we haven't had a full course yellow or a safety car.
Oh, no, you've done it.
Or a red flag.
No,
We had 2 of those this morning. But so change in the Ferrari, so Emil Frey, that's cost Lapalainen getting in, and that is the car currently in this pre-qualifying session that is the quickest by 3.5 of a second ahead of the 21 Audi. The time that set Gilles Magnus did a great lap for a man who's come out of TCR racing, you know, a form of touring car racing which I'm not particularly familiar with, but it's sort of like a silhouette touring car amongst other things. So is that Raffaele back?
It is.
Raffaele is back.
More and more cancellations of laps are coming, incidentally. 99, Lorenzo Petresi being the most recent. Marcus Pavarud, we've talked about, he's been an improver up to 18th. Right, Raffaele Marciello, fastest part of the circuit this, you're nudging 260 kilometres an hour, going down towards the right at Hawthorns, short straight up towards Westfield, 3rd gear, about 140 kilometres an hour.
Again, the hand movements, everything is very progressive, there's no quick hand, you're not having that blur of the steering wheel. Well, to say that, just a little bit there coming through Sheen Curve, then into Sterling's, gets the nose in. I mean, there's quite a lot of hand movement to make the front turn in, but the front is biting. It's just that, it depends how you set your car up now. Into clearways, a little adjustment. Oh, a bigger adjustment because the back end stepped out momentarily. So this will not, in my view, see a significant change in performance for the 88 Mercedes. They still remain 5th overall. That lap was a 23.8 against the 23.0, which was a time established by Marcello earlier in the session.
Druids is a first gear hairpin, down to third gear. Graham Hill bend, lift, turn in, running wide up onto the curb, up through the gears, and then it's back down to second, heading into Surtees. Drag the Mercedes out the other side. Traffic is up the road, 13 minutes to go. The Giacomo Altway Ferrari, which is in the pit lane, is under investigation for its speed, so it must have been a rather quick arrival by the Italian driver.
Christopher Haase, currently running in 7th, has suddenly put in a purple first sector. And what's he driving? Oh, surprise, surprise, it's an Audi. Where will that second and third sector times? Just waiting for him to come through that second sector.
And that's a car that went third last lap from Pereira up to third in the times. So
that was under the radar,
yeah,
wasn't it?
We said that was going to be worth watching, and it was. Right, that is Christopher Haase. So he's taken the car over from Lucas Legere. Purple, purple.
Purple, purple. Come on, Christopher Haase. Again, I mean, Christopher Haase knows this car as well as Christopher Mies knows his Audi. And will this be quickest lap time so far this afternoon?
It is. 1:22.467. That's Finlay Hutchinson, who's been off the road again, but Christopher Haase quicker by over a tenth.
And oh, wow. Oh, dear me, that could have been painful.
Wow.
Oh, and expensive.
Yes. That's Finlay Hutchinson's second moment of the session. If I were Gilles Magnus and the ComTU team, you'd be saying, calm down, dear, wouldn't you?
Well, I wouldn't be as polite as that. Anyway, the fact is Christopher Haase has gone quicker on that last flying lap than Marcello did this morning, the first car driver pairing. And it's not a Mercedes, it's an Audi. And that is, I think, significant because it's maybe indicating that the circuit strengths are working towards Audi, certainly as they have done with Ferrari. Mercedes have still got to find another, about half a second at the minute.
This is Thierry Vermeulen, who on his last lap did an absolute best in the third sector. On this lap, personal best and personal best. Now, assuming it is him behind the wheel and not Albert Costa, this is a good effort. He goes up to third, fastest. That is excellent, 1:22.660.
Ferrari second and third. Oh, and best Mercedes Marcello currently 7th. Best Lamborghini Frank Pereira in 5th. It's going to be an amusing and interesting grid, I think.
Well, were this to be the grid, we now need it to rain, don't we? Or not happen for qualifying. But yeah, this is pre-qualifying, the 2 qualifying sessions to come. That's Finlay Hutchinson's car in the pit lane.
I think it needs probably a little bit of a look out at the rear. Maybe he did just about clip the bank as he slid and slithered and whatever he did. So that car has been pretty impressive so far this session. And Gilles Magnus will be wondering, well, you can see the grass in the dive planes in the front of the front splitter. So Marcello's, he is on a set of tyres that's probably run all this session and may have done a fair bit of the session earlier today, the 30 minutes that the pro drivers were given. So no improvements. In fact, you can see almost 4/10ths down in that first sector, 9/10ths down in the second sector, and into the pit lane. So well, we've got 10 minutes remaining. Now, would I put on a fresh air set of tyres to see what I think this car is capable of, or I know what this car is capable of on a fresh set of tyres?
I'd keep them. I would keep them. I think they've got so little option with the tyres. If the teams are talking about starting the races on a used set, you would be absolutely as sparing as can be.
A lot of abuse on the marker, where you bring the car to. Sort of, is that frustration on the part of Marcello, or did he just say, "Oh, sod it, I don't care"?
Well, he stays in for the moment, but with only 9 minutes to go, more driver changes are happening up and down the pit lane. So Christopher Hauser, the fastest. You write him off at your peril. I mean, you know, he's been racing Audis for over 10 years. He has won championships, won races, won the blue ribbon races, if you like, the 24 hours. Whoops, and a big off for Vermeulen coming out of Westfield through Dingle Dell. That'll be a stoppage, I would have thought.
Oh, yes, and that's going to be a red flag. And there's now, was that a different part of the racetrack?
That's Sheen Curve, that's further up the road, yeah.
Yeah, it was Sheen Curve. I was coming out of Westfield. So the Ferrari is able to, well, it's trying to get out of the grass, but it's pretty lush down there, and it's probably pretty wet as well. And a set of slicks, you can see the rear wheels spinning up, trying to get some. He's got bites. He's left a bit of a small puddle, but there's damage on the. Actually, you know what? It might have got the rear wing is
red flag.
Yeah, I'm not surprised because the bails, and he's staying way off racetrack.
So the session is stopped, although the car in question has got going again. But yeah, with barrier damage, race director Alain Adon calls for a stoppage. And the clock ticks.
Yes, and I suspect the time it'll take to get engineers. Why are you running quite so wide? I don't know, you're coming in slowly. So Thierry Vermeulen had a bit of a wake-up call, but that's what happens. You've got a quick car, and you want to show what you're capable of doing.
Well, it had been a good session because he'd got the car up to third. We just praised him, but now the barriers are damaged and Vermeulen will bring the car back in. So, as I was saying, his father is Max Verstappen's manager, but Thierry himself has done quite a lot of racing in GT cars. He started off in karting, then went to the Porsche Sprint Challenge, went through the Porsche ranks up as far as Carrera Cup Germany, but then decided it really wasn't the sort of car he liked. Was switched last year to the German GT Championship for an Audi.
I don't like the way the Marshal was able to move the barriers.
Wow.
He was able to push the barrier and there was lateral movement.
Right, so Vermeulen, let's have a look. Oh, he goes wide at Westfield to start it.
And look at the speed the car is going. Oh, and it was the right front that hammered it. And the rear took a slight kiss, but it was the right front. So here we go, and he just gets it all wrong. The back end stepped out, corrected it, and then was sort of a tank slapper all the way down. And of course the grass is sodding wet down that part of the racetrack. I didn't expect the front.
The Lamborghini. So that was an isolated incident that he just ran out of road, slithered off the racetrack. That was 119, wasn't it? Which was Baptiste Moulin.
A friend of mine one time made a comment when a driver makes a mistake and said, maybe he's driving along on the crest of a slump. It's a bit harsh.
Well, it was, up until that point, a good session for Vermeulen, new to Brands Hatch. So, although the teams go to work, in some cases they'll do a practice pit stop, they'll do a driver change. There won't be much time left. It rather depends, really, whether the stoppage was ever so slightly previous because of a stationary car or whether it's because of the barrier damage. If it was just because of the car, then okay, we can get back up and running. But if they need to attend to the barrier, I fear that would take more than 6 minutes.
Well, what I saw was the Marshal pushed the barrier and I could see him, the barrier moved. So apart from the protection in front of the barrier needing to be put back into position and secured, the fact that the barrier itself had lateral movement, I think that's something that needs to be attended to as well. If not now, certainly maybe later in the afternoon. Cars still coming down the pit lane in anticipation of the session. We've got 13 minutes and roughly 39 seconds to go. So both the Hondas have made their way down. And, well, I hope they're going to come to a standstill. Yes, they are. So, yeah, I think people are expecting the session to continue.
Well, I suppose you have to be there at the front just in case. The session will restart on short notice, says the race director. So it could be as simple as just trying to get those recticel barriers propped up again and then quickly release the cars, because all the teams will want the mileage if they can get it. So at the front of the queue, there you can see, is the Boutsen VDS Audi. There are two this year, Thierry Boutsen's team merging with VDS, going back to that familiar livery of the Van der Strassen family. The two cars, one driven by, this is number 9, Aurelien Panis and Alberto Di Folco, the other by Adam Ateki and Cesar Gazo. Right, damage inspection, John.
Yes, the right front. and you can see the splitter and the bodywork will need to have a look at. I think it's probably about the. I don't imagine there's any mechanical damage because the bodywork is pretty stout and it would have taken the bulk of whatever the impact was. Again, it was against those rubber protective barriers. What do you call them? There's a name for them. The barrier?
Recticel.
Recticel.
Yeah.
Recticel. Something you get in the chemist, I thought.
Too much information. Or TMI, as my daughter would say. But thank you for that, John. The image of you doing anything with those now from a chemist is one I didn't need. We're off air in 3.5 minutes nearly. That's a relief. Right, so barriers are being put back into place. So is John. And we will be back in business very, very shortly. It'll be interesting to see how many teams do scramble out with only 3 minutes and change on the clock, because if you're at the back of the queue, you might not even get onto a flying lap.
Well, I think that you've answered the question. There are 5 cars have formed up in the expectation that the track will go green, and the rest of the field, the 24 others, are probably sitting back thinking, well, let's go and start our debriefing, because we don't anticipate. Well, actually, there's a bit of activity going on. Suddenly the pit lane looks quite busy. For a minute it was empty, there were no personnel or anything. Now they're all coming back out again.
Right, so session will not be resumed. So there is not enough time after all. So the session is at an end. Confirmation from race control, session will not be resumed. So the cars will be released in order to drive back round, I would have thought, but there's not going to be time left for a lap. So, frustration that, but an interesting session nonetheless, and one of the stars of all of that was Gilles Magnus, and he is with Gemma in the pit lane.
It's a busy pit lane down here at the moment. Gilles, you remained fastest for quite a chunk of that session. Obviously for the team, this is looking like a strong weekend.
Yeah, it looks good. I mean, Hazy improved the lap time by a lot. Potential was there for me as well. In lap 2 I had some unfortunate traffic. So yeah, I'm feeling quite confident. Let's see what qualifying brings.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, Gilles Magnus, a happy man, but how can I phrase this? Gilles is quicker and has been more consistent today than has been Finlay Hutchison, so they need to try and bring Finlay to the Gilles Magnus pace, don't they? Although that car is comfortably ahead in gold, but I'm not convinced he's necessarily going to be fighting for an outright win.
Well, I mean, Gilles Magnus, that's what his focus probably will be on. But of course, you're a 2-car driver lineup, and you're fighting for your own individual class or category, and that should be the focus of your weekend. But you know, if you are quick, and that car has been quick, you automatically think about pole position, front row of the grid, winning the race.
Well, you've got to say that one of the real heroes of the session has been Christopher Halser. We have said it, you rule him out at your peril, but he was the fastest, Gemma.
Christopher obviously pushing on. I know it's only pre-quali, but it's certainly showing that the Audi seem to be the strongest here.
Well, definitely. I mean, Brands Hatch is a unique track, and I think our Audi R8 with the mid-engine philosophy is working here very well. We know that from the past, for sure. It's pre-qualifying. It doesn't say, yeah, maybe the truth right now, but let's wait for qualifying. But the car feels good. This is one of the most important things here in Brands Hatch. And yeah, keep the fingers crossed that we can go this pace again.
And you think this is reflective of what will happen throughout the weekend?
Well, it's a bit early to speak about this. I think just wait for the qualifying, but I'm quite confident. The car feels good. The Come2U Audi is working well, and from that moment on, you know, we keep working, and then we see what would happen in the race.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, it's good to have him back at the pointy end of the grid, isn't it? And Christopher Halser and Lucas Legere will be a good combination, that is for sure. And Confer Lapalainen, Giacomo Altway second in the times. So, all of that takes us nicely to the qualifying session. That's going to be the next time we see the cars on track. But for now, it is Christopher Halser, the fastest, from Giacomo Altway second, Alex Arca third from Gilles Magnus, and then Raffaele Marciello fifth. Sixth, Ricardo Feller ahead of Christopher Mies, then Patrick Niederhauser. Thierry Vermeulen in the end fell to ninth, and it was Jordan Lab rounding out the top 10. Valentino Rossi, as you see, 14th, with the efforts also of Maxime Martin in that car. how representative that order is going to be compared to qualifying, well, we'll find out. 5 minutes to 4 local time. The cars will be on track, and it's 1:45 local time now, if you want to make sure your watch is telling you the right thing. Jordan Pepper and Franck Pereira, having been in the top 6, ultimately falling down the order because of a cancelled lap time. So it illustrates that there are a lot of quick people, but that track limits really is a big issue around here. Paddock Hill Bend, Graham Hill Bend, they're the 2 corners that have been catching people out, and all the way through that session we were hearing of lap times being cancelled and track limit warnings being given. So, looking pretty good for Audi, because they are 1st, 3rd, 4th, 6th, 7th, 8th and 11th to really be the dominant brand up at the pointy end of the times at the end of pre-qualifying. Let's have a look at the highlights then of that pre-qualifying session, with qualifying to come for the 2 races. It's a split qualifying period in a couple of hours' time. So early on we had a rapid lap being put in by number 27 Audi, the Christopher Gregoire Mistier entry, and both Albert Costa and Thierry Vermeulen were quick, although we had this off for Vermeulen. Wasn't his only one. Finlay Hutchinson had a couple as well. One was down at Paddock Hill Bend, the other here at Graham Hill Bend. Gio Magnus, though, had been really impressive in number 21 Audi earlier on in the session. But the Audi is looking as though they could well be the cars to beat. Alex Alaka and Lorenzo Petresi, for example, looking very, very good in the Silver Cup to take the fastest time in silver, 3rd overall. Albert Costa and Thierry Vermeulen's Ferrari was also quick until Vermeulen had this moment late in the session that did barrier damage and stopped the session. It was a big off, very high speed, and that friction-free grass tobogganing him down into the rector-cell barriers. The sister car, that of Giacomo Altway, had looked very racy as well. So, what does that tell us? Well, it tells us that we are in for an absolute battle royal going into qualifying. Fastest Christopher Haase then in the Comptiou Audi, and we'll see whether that pace can be reflected again in qualifying shortly.